Welcome to Meme Town Hall or Meme Town Town Hall. I can't decide. This is a space where we can ruminate about what we just saw and ruminate on the question of what it is that memes can do. And I don't know that there's any one answer to that. Maybe we'll come up with multiple answers, and maybe we won't come up with answers at all. Maybe just better questions. I also want to mention before we get started that this conversation is being streamed on the MN Artists Facebook page. And so, yeah, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Rye Gentleman. I'm a PhD student at the U, and I've been coming across memes a lot lately in classroom settings mostly, both talking to my own students in seminars that I go to. It's coming up a lot at conferences. I think it's just something that's just kind of starting to come up as a major topic of conversation. And so, yeah, my interest in memes has primarily been as a teacher and as an academic. And my pronouns are he, him, and his, by the way.
Hi, I'm Carroll, they, them, their pronouns. I'm a musician working in the Twin Cities in various bands and solo projects that are very influenced by the aesthetics of the internet to varying degrees. I'm also a member of the Facebook communities Left Book and Weird Facebook, which you may have heard of. If not, stay away. Very dangerous, very dangerous places. I would recommend never going online on the internet. There's a lot of trash out there.
Cool. Hi, I'm Ziyang Wu, in Chinese Wu Ziyang. I come and grew up from China, moved to Italy, Florence for my undergrad study for 5 years, got to US 3 years ago. Did graduate study and currently teaching at MCAT as a visiting faculty. My interest in memes I'm not a specialist in meme at all, and but I was always very interested in how meme functions as a virus in everyday life, everyday culture, and that how much that has affect my own art making or art making in general, and also talk to the idea about alienation, micro alienation in everyday lives as well. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so for the format of the panel, what we're going to do is we have a series of questions, 5 questions, and we're going to kind of move through those questions and talk about them among ourselves for about 5 minutes per question, and then we'll open it up for audience feedback and questions. So let's get started. Our first question, so we had these little conversation stations during Meme Town. And so the first question is, what did you talk about or not talk about with the people who came to your stations?
I can start here. I think the question I got most often was just kind of, what is this? What's going on? What's happened to the Walker? Which was nice because that feels like sort of what happens when you show a meme to someone who doesn't know the meme, and it's just like, oh, I was just expecting you to get it. Now that I have to explain it, I realize that this doesn't make sense as a joke. There was someone who I was talking to that they were saying something about memes as being like a reference without really referencing anything, or just being pure reference. And that really does come down to where it's something of oh, this is funny because it's the monkey getting a haircut inserted into this thing, but I can't tell you why the monkey getting a haircut became a thing. It just did. And I think that was something good that I was discussing with Skylar Nowinski, who made the Meme Town map, of just trying to find a balance here of between catering to people who get it, but also being an open space for people who aren't part of this community, and how do you find that balance with memes? And how much of that culture is just sort of this exclusionary, if you've been there, you know what's going on. If you don't, you can't sum it up in 5 minutes.
What has been counter to me, or has been expressed to me the most was a feeling of fear, I would say. Yeah, a lot of fear has been shown through our conversations over the period of tonight, of not knowing or not being sure of first of all, like what this is, but also to see the sort of like miscommunication, misunderstanding, misusage of imagery, of text, and sort of like ultimately leads to a goal of nonsensical, and that's the biggest sort of like the fair feeling I got through the several past conversations.
Yeah, it was a real mix for me. It was either I was getting questions by meme enthusiasts, like by people who are really excited to like really dig in and talk more about memes and who love memes and who make memes or circulate memes. And then the other half were questions that ranged from the kind of the fear response that you're talking about to even basic like what is a meme? Right. I got a lot of kind of like sheepish, like what is a meme? Who is Pepe? What? Yeah, so it really varied. Which I think is funny. We've structured these conversations, like these questions, in kind of a binary. All the questions are kind of binary, and that was kind of a binary that I saw in the way that people were talking with me and asking questions about memes or what they wanted to talk about. Should we move to our next question? Yeah. Okay. So political force or political fluff memes.
I can start.
Yeah.
So, from my experience in terms of political force or political usage, in Chinese politics has been quite new and interesting, but not. Most of them are not in a positive way. So, I think because of the openness of the country, the emergence of internet and everything. Coming from the Cultural Revolution time, the usage of propaganda as meme, until now, the new usage, which is sort of like the mimic of president's behavior, of say like U.S. president, which is like you will go outside and talk to everyday people in the rain without an umbrella. The showmanship, and then we somehow get the first lady as well, and all the clothings that she's wearing are made in China, designed by Chinese designers, and those memes has been distributed so big and is everywhere to sort of like further take control of everybody's everyday life. So memes has been used mostly as a sort of like strengthen the dominance by the government. I even feel a little bit fair to say that sometimes.
Yeah, I think with memes here, one of the big things, with this question of are memes a political force or they just fluff on top of it, is like, if you really want to be convinced of these points, anything that's going to be shown as a big political change is going to come through like paragraphs, pages worth of logic, changing your viewpoint. You're not just going to see one meme and you're like, oh, actually gender is fake because I saw like this one picture with a funny sentence on it. But it's like really helpful. You can sort of see if you're part of meme cultures and even like just have friend groups that share memes and meme type images around. You can sort of see the waves of like what questions are being discussed, what the current take on different topics is. And I think it's a good way to sort of find who's on the same page as you. That is sort of nice when I'll share something. And like, for example, for me, I came from a very conservative high school. And so it's nice when I share something that might be very basic feminist or something, but then I see someone from my high school who was a few grades under me likes it on Facebook, and it's like, oh, like, this person's in agreement with me. Nice. Maybe I should catch up with them, see what's going on.
Yeah, so I think the question of politics and memes is one of the most interesting ones for me. And I've been doing a lot of reading lately in anticipation of working with my students around memes this semester. And I think I think there is a way, certainly, that they can create kind of political coalitions. I'm thinking mostly in like the U.S. context, because I know it's the way you think about them politically is very different. And I think there can be some coalition building. I think that. But at the same time, we're reading all about like I'm reading a lot about like the meme magic of Trump's campaign coordinators, right? The folks who were working in his communications campaign, and like this was a real term that was really being used by people in his communications team, right? This idea of meme magic and these and paying folks money to make these memes and circulate them, and this was something that the Trump campaign was taking very seriously, and so I don't think it's quantifiable. Like I don't think we can think very quantifiably about memes and how they affect politics, but I think it's a real question that we need to consider what it's doing to political discourse, how it's furthering particular political goals, and yeah, I think the kinds of discourse that memes create is really weird. They're so full of information. There's so much context that you need to understand them, and yet you can respond to them in one of two ways. You can laugh at them or grimace. Right, so there's a way in which they're like these really dense communicative objects, but the way that you can respond to them is so limited, and that really concerns me in terms of political discourse.
Yeah, but I think thinking about that, I think hyping would be, or is that called hyping? Like hyping could be like one of the more important tool in terms of like if there is a chance for meme as a political force. Because for instance, from my use of not the social media that we use here, but two of the more dominant Chinese social media hashtag has been like I think one of the more useful memes. I treat like hashtag as the most powerful meme, and you can hype it. You can like what has been done here politically. Or in the election, you can like pay a lot of money to be. There's always like a top list of the words that has been hashtagged the most. The more you pay, the higher rank you will be. So there is a way by everyday people to make political force, even though.
Oh, I was just going to ask you if they'll open about that in China, because I know like those stuff will, on Twitter here you'll get like a post that comes up that wouldn't have showed up in your newsfeed anyway, but it'll tell you like this is a sponsored post. You're only seeing this because someone paid money.
Yes, like when I see the sponsor, most of the time I just ignore it, right? But in China, the most social media you don't see that. There's no like the sponsor part of it. So there is actually like a chance for like everyday people to do some like subversive political, to treat it as a political force. But all these informations will be refreshed, for instance, like every hour. So you probably need a lot of money to make that work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely like a devil's advocate position you can take in the U.S., which is that there have been some enormously effective hashtags, right? Like hashtag if they gun me down, hashtag not your Asian sidekick. Like there have been a lot of really, if we think about the hashtag as a meme, there have been a lot of really important, kind of campaigns that have happened on Twitter that have done some, I think, important political work too, right? So yeah, I think you can look at it at either way, but it's, yeah, I think it needs so much more unpacking and thinking through.
I just wanted to talk about the idea of meme magic for a second, because that was something I was thinking about earlier today. I was worried I was going to mention Moshe McLuhan, but he has like the thing about how like any art form just by existing as a genre is more important than any instance of the art form itself. And I think you can sort of see that with what happened in the 2016 election, where suddenly everyone's confused about like, oh, like Pepe the Frog's an important political symbol now. What's going on? What does this mean? Is meme magic real? Is there something we're not getting? And I think that amount of confusion was probably had a bigger impact on the election than like any single meme did of convincing anyone that something was true.
Yeah. Should we move to our next question? I think we spent our allotted time on that one. Okay, reductive or complex? Oh, no, it didn't change. There we go. Reductive or complex?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah.
On? Or in what way?
Well, I think like one thing is definitely, I had someone who came up to me and one of the post things they said were like, oh, I know what memes are. It's the top text and the bottom text. And it was like, okay, yeah, like was that for a while and it can still be that, but there's also so many like, I've seen plenty of memes that are like, 4 paragraphs explaining why cops are bad or something on like a picture of Sailor Moon or whatever to make it a meme. And it's something where, I would say with any of this, my question would be what's changed and what stays the same with other art forms, and that you could compare, if you have a meme that just says trans women are real women or something, that's obviously a very like sound bitey take, and again, it's not really presenting like an argument so much as just an opinion, but there's not really that much of a difference between having that or just like a punk rock band singing the same thing over and over again. And like there's also the element of people adding their own commentary on posting a meme or having discussions in the comments, so I think it has a chance to be something really soundbitey, but it also, as much as any art form, has the chance to be more extensive and dig into some nuances.
But yeah, I think conceptually it could be very powerful in terms of making it more complex. I always treat meme, when I think of meme versus cultural norms, I think of like in the 60s and 70s how performativity is doing to modernism. It's sort of like make it in a more complex way. And from my experience of the complex in the use of language, I feel meme has done a great job. For instance, I grew up by calling miss a miss, but throughout the time, when the cultural context and everything changed a little bit, when we call miss, which is pronounced 小姐 in Mandarin, it become the sex worker, like slowly throughout the time, but actually by citation, right, and slowly got changed. It functions sort of like a meme that has been said again and again. And another word that I think would be good would be colleague, which is pronounced 同志, but now it means queer people. There's no specific reason why that happened. It's exactly like meme. It just it is just there, and then people start to use it, pick it up slowly, and yeah, it got spread out and totally changed how people use language. So I think in a say like that's one way of making it more complex, right? But on the other side, the reductive part, I can kind of interpret it in 2 ways. First is the reduction in the capability of people's communication capability, right? There's a lot of expression that can be only conveyed through memes, and after a while, especially like textual communication, people just stop having the sort of capability, and because that can be expressed so easily by emojis, by memes. That's one reductivity, and the other one is from the imagery. So the resolution of imagery, because of the copy and paste over again, is reductive. So it just end up like we're living in this like low res, not that low, but pretty low res world.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way in which it's a little bit of both, and I think you have to consider both the reductive potential and the complex potential of memes whenever you talk about them, because I mean, from a content point of view, they're always incredibly complex. We were talking about with one of the people that I talked with, we were talking about how you can't really understand memes unless you understand memes. Right, so there's something incredibly complex about that, right? That because unless you understand this kind of whole universe of pre-existing memes, it's hard to understand any one single meme. So there is something incredibly complex about them. But I think in terms of what they allow, there's still something that really bothers me about what can be communicated with them, and how what they are communicating how it does or doesn't travel. right? And that's where I see them as reductive, I guess, in that sense. But let's move on to our next question. Okay, so cutting edge or derivative? I would be really curious to hear your thoughts about this, because I think we were thinking about this a little bit through other art practices. Yeah.
Yes, I think for instance, like cutting edge, I see the the sort of like meme has a power of, first of all, like collectivity, and sort of like has a power of destroy the artist as a heroic model, and also challenge a lot of ideas, for instance, such as like when it's the end of a piece, of an art piece. And for meme, there's no ending, right? And that's something that is really cool about it, that is related to art. But also, I think in the use of languages, I believe. I hope my English is better, so to be more sensitive to a lot of new cutting edge change in languages. But yeah, from my experience with Chinese, or Mandarin in general, like our language has been affected so much by meme, not necessarily internet meme, but everyday meme, that we like say incorporate a lot of, like, first of all, like foreign languages, and but those languages has been functioned as a meme for a while, and then has finally been adopted and put in the language system as a part of the new language, right? Or yeah, that's some kind of example, I think, that could be cutting edge in a lot of ways. But yeah, it could be the opposite as well. Yeah.
One of the things that I talked about with a couple of the groups that came through was how I feel like there's very much a distinction between, at this point, like just a very basic inserting whatever, when people are running meme pages that are themed around something, it's very easy with a lot of memes to just insert your keyword into whatever the meme is. So it's something where, like, there was the meme going around for a while where it was like, oh, why is my sister's name Rose? Oh, because your mother loves roses. Oh, so, like, where did I get my name? And then the dad responds, enough questions, Lego Star Wars 2 for the PlayStation or something, and then, like, Steelers memes comes in and inserts, like, the Steelers for their thing, and forklift memes comes in and inserts forklifts for the punchline and whatever. And that has hit a point where that's, gets pretty old pretty quick. It's, like, funny the first three you see, and then you're just like, okay, everyone's going to insert their thing. And so then you have the memes that are really taking, I think, a more avant-garde approach in the same way that, like, modernist art does, where it's about knowing the tradition and, like, the art form already, and sort of taking a meta approach to what the meme is doing, and, like, having an unexpected punchline by subverting the expectation. So I think there's really a distinction at this point in memes between, like, the more cutting edge ones within any individual meme and the ones that are just derivative, just like doing the minimal work.
And you had talked about, when we talked the other night, you had talked about some of the meme work that you do and the way that it tries to kind of intervene in the notion of the meme. Do you want to talk about some of that? Because I think that would be a really interesting thing to think about in this question.
Yeah, I guess I've, like, tried to do some stuff that plays with that, like are you just thinking, like, examples I've had that fall into that more meta thing, or like some meme work I've...
You kind of talked about how you kind of intervene in what a meme is or does or is capable of in the way that you kind of subvert the genre.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've, like, because I get frustrated, or not frustrated, but just, like, pretty quickly, since I don't have, like, a brand to build around or anything, and I get tired of the more basic memes that I've tried to do things when I have made memes that upset the formula in some way. I guess a recent example, there was the elf on a shelf meme going around where it was like things that rhymed, and so I did one that it was Aristotle in a Chipotle, which works if you look at it, which is stolen from some old Tumblr joke, which also is, I guess, like a meme thing where I was bringing that in, but just trying to find something where, like, it does work within the meme, but it also doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah. That gets to I think that gets to some of the potential for doing something cutting edge with memes, right? I think, okay, let's go. We want to make sure we have time for audience questions too. So let's go to our last of our 5 questions. Divisive or unifying?
Yeah, again, using an example, I have lots of great example in terms of divisive. First one would be from the past summer, the emergence of Chinese hip hop, and it was such a big subculture, like not big, sorry, like underground subculture for the past 10 years. Nobody knows there is hip hop culture in China, and that was all started the past summer, from a talent show called Rap of China, but people still don't don't care. And until there's a meme called "Do you have freestyle?" Do you have freestyle? With the and with the imagery of Chris Wu, which is one of the more well-known Chinese idol rapper. So do you have freestyle? And that spread out like immediately, like right after the get comment by, I think the show in the end received more than 2 billion comments overall. Like that was all just started by the "Do you have freestyle" meme. But then for instance, Chinese people started to look at memes. Oh, sorry. Like hip hop culture, and to start investigate what specifically Chinese hip hop culture is versus American hip hop culture, and the specificity, right? And I think this is very divisive as an example. Another example could be like the Nick Young questioning phase. Do you know that? The basketball player Nick Young questioning phase. And like even my parents use them right now as a meme or emoji. And like my parents never met an African American or Black British or a guy or a girl from the continent of Africa. But we started using that, and because of that, so many immigrant workers coming from West Africa, from Cameroon, Nigeria, Mali, and so on, right? Like there's a lot of worker in the southern part of China, and they started doing live stream of the questioning phase, and that, to start from such a numb way, but then totally bring up the awareness of this huge population of immigrant workers, and also the understanding of another race, and so on. So that has been really divisive from my experience.
Yeah, I think also in the question, we talked a lot with the political angle of, how it can be sort of a coalition building in just the aspect of you see someone else likes your thing about capitalism being bad, and you realize that there was someone who has that political stance. But I think it's also interesting, as we talked about with what people were talking to us about, how there was that angle of there's also the divide between people who are in this meme culture and people who aren't. And so there will be people who I know about of like trans exclusionary feminists who are very well known in internet circles, even if they're people who I strongly agree with and am opposed to, or far right communities and stuff that I know about that, I just assume that people know about because I talk to a lot of people who are also on the internet a lot. But then when I talk to someone who doesn't, and it's oh yeah, I forget that Kathy Brennan isn't just a textbook name, that it's only people who have been on Tumblr a lot will know this. And so it's sort of a weird divisive in the sense of cutting off and just having this entirely different realm in which politics are happening, or culture, or whatever is happening, not purely politics.
Yeah, and I think that's what I see as the kind of the divisive potential of memes is because in order to understand them, you need you need so much contextual information. And those are vocabularies and worlds of information that are developed in certain circles, right? And so there's a way in which that becomes polarizing, right? If you can't understand the kind of symbols and language and all of this of the media use of a group whose beliefs maybe fall outside your own, how are those are conversations ever going to happen, right? If especially if conversations, political ones, are happening largely through memes.
But I guess also something will potentially also that becomes like a quick in that for me also recently, like falling in more radical left-wing circles came somewhat easily because I was introduced to like these online cultures where they were already speaking this meme language that made it easier to jump in because I already had this connection, and then like, you know, connecting with people all around the world who just happen to have this thing and having that as a starting point to, even if like I had some political catching up or disagreements with them at first, that we had this shared internet vocabulary.
Yeah.
I have one more thing to add.
Yeah. Let's open it up for
so
questions.
I feel like divisive or unifying or not would depend so much on because I think we're at a transition between Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 era, and I think how meme functions will be affected so much by this transition, and we like if one day we finally reach the Web 3.0 era, which like will be changed so much by artificial intelligence, by the selection of internet, like, right? So and I think in terms of unifying, it has a potential of like meme as a powerful tool will be unified because like the Web 3.0 will help us to sort of like make selections of information, right? That has a potential to be like really constrained in certain way. But let's see. But I think that could be play a very important factor in, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah, I haven't heard Web 3.0 yet, but I know where you're going with that, and yeah, I think things will definitely be a lot different. Okay, so we've got just a little bit of time left, but we want to open it up for questions. And when you have a question, please use the microphone. There will be folks coming around with microphones that'll help make sure that anyone who's listening via streaming will be able to hear it. Let's see, we've got a question, one here and one here.
Yeah, I'll stand up. I'm interested in hearing y'all talk a little bit about the archiving of memes, because I think one thing I think of a lot is how quickly meme cultures and memes themselves evolve. It's sort of a very faster pace in this vocabulary, these bubbles. And thinking about sites like Know Your Meme being absolutely key to getting hooked back into things if you miss something. So just talking about where you think that's going and what kind of this archival force is when we're in a stage of the web where things can disappear and things are so sort of transient, and being able to hold on to as sort of a history.
I think that's a great and really important question. I think that I used to be a librarian, but I've been a PhD student for many years now, and so I feel like even within the time that I've been away from librarianship, it's the methods and modes of archiving are completely lost to me, right? But yeah, I think sites like Know Your Meme are doing really important work. And I would imagine that there are other kind of internet repositories that are holding onto this information too, or at least I would hope so. Because you're right, it is something that shifts. Like, you know, we were talking about how quickly a meme will kind of appear, change, and then disappear. Like, it's like, you know.
Yeah, and like appear get oversaturated really quickly at this point because it's hit a point where enough people know how to play the game that a bunch of variations appear very quickly. I think with the idea of archiving, one of the things that's nice is that it's hit a point where also like, you know, a new meme will pop up, and then a meme that died like 6 months ago, someone will find a way to work that into the new meme. And that's like suddenly this new, like reinvigorating that and becomes a reference to something older. Or like something that feels really gone by, but it's still such a high turnover, thinking about like how absurd it would be to, like if an author wrote a novel that referenced a novel that just came out 6 months ago, there's no way that would be like canon enough to be like worth the reference, that it would be more likely to be referencing like something from the canon. And the fact that we have this canon that's like moving much more in real time is very exciting.
And I think to have to continue with what you said, to have different iterations of certain memes could be a great way of archiving, no matter like different iterations, like being input and transformed through different cultures. Like when I saw the Chris interactive performance of Pepe the Frog there, for instance, how that has been used, for instance, in my own culture with the more with the translation of the transformation of not only the Pepe's facial appearance, what Pepe is having with Pepe, and also the textual part has been substituted with the most cutting edge languages, sentences, and then that will be transformed into other cultures as well. So I think that's one of the good way. And also just saw the 3D version of Pepe. I was thinking like that could be like another way, which is like built on technology, and one day or maybe now Pepe is appearing in virtual reality, augmented reality applications, right? And I do feel like that's a kind of a very good way of in terms of archiving.
Let's go to another question because we've got just a few more minutes left.
So this is kind of related to the last one as well as the last question, divisive or unifying. My question is more about the study of memes or just understanding meme culture, either from an academic perspective or from somebody hoping to get into the culture, which is one of the things I see a lot within not necessarily memes, but meme culture surrounding it, is this intentional sort of ideological like obscuring of understanding, the idea that everything is coated in 20 layers of irony and that anybody who attempts to understand memes is missing the point. How does that, do you think that sort of community sort of asset or something is a roadblock to being able to study memes or understand them? Or what do you think the challenges are in our understanding, or what do you think people would even think of an event like this within the culture? I don't know if that made any sense at all, but it's something that I think about a lot and I want to hear other people's opinions on.
I mean, I guess to some degree, I think the idea of like, coming at this thing from outside the culture could be applied to a lot of out things, that it's something where, if you spend like 6 months listening to hardcore punk records and don't learn anything about the culture around it and then show up to a hardcore punk show, you're going to probably feel pretty out of place. But yeah, I'd say as far as like how that's helped with obscuring, I think the one thing that sets memes apart is, again, just like how fast the turnover is, and the fact that there is definitely like a series of conventions around it that can be learned and such, but that also part of it is just like having the most up-to-date knowledge of memes and stuff. And I think it was, you were over at my conversation station actually, or maybe right after you left, that we were talking about like when corporations try to use memes, and it's usually like 4 months after the big boast of that meme, and how it really is something that's something that like being inside the culture is really taken badly towards, that everyone looks and they're like, what is Denny's doing trying to use this meme? This died like 5 months ago. Please don't try and sell us eggs with our thing that we're done with.
I feel like in terms of studying, I think maybe a good comparison could be folk art. In the art context, could be folk art versus fine art, and because I always see folk art as a more anonymous, collective or shared aesthetic, shared experience of, but also being able to create a sort of like unique form or content and shared by a certain community, which is quite similar to what certain meme community or culture has been created, and the low economy, the low cost of creation in folk compared to folk art. But folk art has experienced such a long time to finally being able to sort of like being absorbed a little bit more and more by fine art, right? Like we see a lot more folk art pieces in like big biennales, Venice Biennale or Documenta of folk artists or outsider artists. And so I feel in terms of being able to studying, we just probably need a little bit more time and to have it as for itself to transform and to reach a phase, and then we can face it more correctly. So I feel like folk art could be maybe an example of seeing that.
Yeah, and I think there are a number of ways that I think it is going to take time, and I think it's going to require new ways of thinking in some ways, because I think there are a lot of ways of thinking that come to mind very quickly in how you might want to think about memes, like you want to think about semiotics or visual culture, but you also need to take into account the way that information moves on the internet, the way that the way that these are that having political content. I think it. And so it seems to me as if any one way of getting into them that is a pre-existing way doesn't entirely work. Like it almost seems like there's something new that has to be built, and that will be a new way of thinking, or some new way of thinking that is going to have to take some time to develop.
I think just looking at the artworks that we had on display tonight sort of speaks to where memes differ from other art forms. Where of the 5 pieces, there was really only one, Chris's piece, that dealt with a specific meme. That is something where, because with the memes, so much of it is just like you see it and you get it, that things had to be sort of more around the concept of how memes work, except for with like Pepe as an example of a meme that really sort of went beyond just being itself. But that is something where, in a lot of cases, if you made an artwork that was just like a statue of, haircut monkey or something, that's like nice, but it doesn't really get at memes as a concept, because as we've talked about a little bit, there's really no content. It's just like recognition.
Yeah. All right. So, I think we're out of time. I don't know how closely we can do one more. Okay. So we can, one more question.
So I guess it's, I have a headache right now, so I'm really having a hard time finding exactly how I want to phrase this. But so we've talked a little bit about the implicit, the basic understanding of memes that people just have when they recognize them immediately, and how they sort of traverse as like mutual understanding or common understanding. I guess my question is sort of centered around a certain internet phenomena, which I don't know if you're familiar with Christian Weston Chandler or the Sonichu comics, but it's like a really unfortunate piece of internet history of trolling and this person's life being kind of degraded through his content creation, and like not understanding of how to interact with people who were clearly egging him on. So I guess my question is like, how if memes have this sort of like baseline understood information that is like built into them, how do we like bring out like negative connotation or stereotype within those contexts?
Yeah, I think that's a great and important question, because if there was a really great book that a communication scholar, and I'm forgetting her name right now, wrote this year on trolling. And the internet meme, it emerged out of 4chan, right?
The Kill Onomi's
maybe.
thing? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of the author.
Okay.
Either.
Yeah. But it's a really interesting book, and the internet meme, as we understand it, particularly the one with the image and the text above and below. I mean, that emerged from 4chan, that emerged from Bboard, right? It's the origins are horrible, and a lot of what. A lot of the imagery that started then does still track through and does have those connotations. So I'm not exactly sure what to do with that, but yeah, I think it's something that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I think there's a degree in which, as we've as I've just said, that there's no content to memes, and there's not, but there's also like a way in which you can definitely notice trends. I think one good example is just that in a lot of these earlier memes where it was like these character top text, bottom text memes, you had like Bad Luck Brian and these people who were just like people whose pictures got turned into memes, usually based on them looking like conventionally unattractive or like kind of dorky or whatever. And you know, sometimes you'd see these interviews with like, what is it like to get like your picture shared around forever as like example of over enthusiastic naive college student or whatever. And you know, it's something where like it is funny, but also there was sort of this implicit, like you said, there's sort of this underlying logic of like, oh, this person looks funny and so therefore that's bad. Which like again as a trend is more impactful than any individual iteration of it. It probably is, unless you're the person who happens to be that meme, in which case it's very impactful on you. Possibly. I never actually read those interviews. I should. But, you know, I think there are ways that you can look at that kind of trend and that I think people have subverted it. Like, for example, a lot of the more left-leaning meme pages that I follow or I'm friends with, you have people who will use stock photo images a lot because that's something where it's using these pictures where it's like clearly it also looks dorky sort of in that same way, but in a way where the person is like not trying to look good and not trying to present well and it's more ridiculous because of the circumstance versus just being like, oh, this person looks whatever. And so I think there is a chance to actually like go through and look at trends like you said and just find out what are those implicit assumptions and how do we combat those.
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but I think in terms of it seems like there is the sort of concern about this oversimplicity, or right. But I think for instance using a stock image as an example, I think actually memes like personally helped me to be more aware of what image could do. By the juxtaposition of different texts and to sort of like further challenge how we frame images, read images, and things like that. So I feel like actually it's a very sort of healthy experience from that. Like helped me to sort of like reconsider the reading of imagery. With the what context that is, with the juxtaposition of textual and or visual images and so on. And because stock images are often, like what you say, it's kind of lame, in a way, but there is a potential of like juxtaposition of informations or like recycle of information. The same image with like 100 different tags, but it refers to 100 different things, right? Like with that, so I think it could be very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it challenges media literacy. Like, it makes us think about media literacy differently because the amount of work required to fully get what's happening in a given meme requires so many more steps, I think, than how we currently maybe have thought about media literacy in the past. I think the other question I have is that the stock photos thing is fascinating to me. It's almost as if, like, can we start to think about what like a meme ethics would be? Like, are there ethical ways to create memes? I mean,
Yeah, I think definitely it's, I don't know, there are ethics around those as far as, especially when it gets into political stuff. And so obviously there's like that element of just adding ethics on top of a meme. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see more and more how the discussion of just that, like, what is the form of the meme? There was a really great article that Eric had sent us in preparation for this, also just talking about like how the use of black bodies and black language and stuff in memes has become a very appropriated thing. And I think it is, as people are starting to take a more academic approach, it is getting beyond just this point of like, oh, I just get the joke because I get it, and more people asking like, what is the joke here? And as that happens, I think we're going to see the art form continue to evolve and change in continuously stranger ways, but also more ethical, possibly, or less, and both at the same time. And the internet is strange. There's a lot going on.
okay. Yes, the internet is strange. There's a lot going on. I think those are the ending words of the night. Thank you all for coming out and for having this conversation with us.